sound pretty good.
I'm assuming that we don't have like some heavy filter or flanger or something on the mic.
This is just pure goodness. Hey guys, thanks again for joining us. I'm Brad, this is Jamie, and welcome to the Main Stage Music Weekly live stream. And so hey, first of all, these things sound awesome. And I'll just let you know that we're not plugging in direct. These are just a microphone, a guitar, and you're enjoying this thing. So I just want people to know. So what we're talking about today is actually
1880s, 1890s technology?
Yeah.
Running?
Yeah, exactly.
Still works.
So basically what we're talking about today is a technology that has been around for literally thousands of years.
Well, it's what differentiates us from the primates, right?
Maybe. And then
Fire!
But now has only started to enter into the world of guitars. And that is the process of, the fancy word is called torrification. Now, if you go and do a quick Wikipedia definition of, oh, by the way, here comes the Chattanooga choo-choo. So if you're hearing that train, we're not fixing to get run over. It's just where we live. But anyways, if you do a quick Wikipedia lookup of what torrified or torrification is, it's simply the process of burning something.
Baked.
Yeah, you're baking it. And so, for example, charcoal is torrified, wood, right?
Heavily torrified.
Yeah, so effectively, and when you do that, of course, it becomes a little charred briquette, right? Well, when we're talking about building guitars, the act of torrification is considerably different. This goes all the way back to, we'll just say, ancient shipbuilders who would take and burn, if you will, or bake the wood on the ship because it made the ship's hull more stable and rigid. Ironically too, I wouldn't say it's ironically, interestingly enough as well, when you bake the wood, you remove a lot of the moisture content, which means that it will float better. So a lot of the old shipbuilders would bake the wood or burn the wood to kind of help remove the water moisture. So now what does that have anything to do with guitars? So I want to say about 10 years ago, the first I've ever heard of the torrified wood, you had a guitar builder named Dana Bourgeois who came out with one of his slope-shouldered dreadnought guitars, which they're fabulous instruments, by the way. And his whole thing was, hey, this one has a torrified wood top. And I'm like, here we go again, like another pixie dust thing. And
yep.
It's baked maple. And I always criticize my wife for buying, she can't just buy ranch dressing, she's got to buy like roasted honey nut peppercorn hazelnut ranch. And I'm like, you're just buying adjectives here, But you try it and it's like, oh yeah, I guess I can kind of taste that stuff. And
word salad.
So basically I thought that's what was happening here in our industry. Okay, so, this is a baked seasoned top with, I'm thinking, here we go again. What is it going to next? Pumpkin spice,
Sinker mahogany.
Yeah, well, so, but.
Was it pre-fossilized?
Well, yeah, fossilized. No, they had fossilized walrus ivory for the nut and saddle and bridge pins. That's a thing already.
Yeah.
So anyway, word salad's a good word. So I honestly was thinking to myself, what? Torrified, But I did try these things at the NAMM show, and I have to say, I was convinced. Now, first of all, before we get too deep into this little subject, I want to encourage you guys to share and like and all this kind of stuff. But also, we want to hear your comments, your opinions, your thoughts, your feelings, whatever, on torrified guitars. And because we definitely live on y'all's comments and care. It makes it more fun, right? So first of all, we got our first little comment. It says, far out. I like it. And thanks for watching, Chris.
Now, you vintage torrified guys will know that vintage torrification is far better than any modern torrification. So if you got a first edition torrified top, it's much better than these new torrified tops.
So, I mean, getting back to what what torrify. So I had to do quite a little bit of research on what the process of torrification is, because, I mean, I've seen some woodworkers take like a torch and just, you know, burn the edges off, and I'm asking them, what are they doing? They go, well, when you caramelize it like that, you know, they got some word for it, but it helps stave off rot, like in deck building and stuff. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense, okay, because obviously the moisture, you pull it out with the torch, and
like deck building and such.
So that being said, so they would do that, and I'm like, okay, so surely not taking a torch to a guitar top or whatever, right? So I had to look into how they classify this as torrification. First of all woods that are used for fine woodworking, so guitar building, it could also go with high-end cabinet making and stuff, they're already dried out. You don't just go out to the forest and cut a tree down and you know, board slice it up and start making guitars with it, because there's a lot of moisture in wood, and so it's contracting and expanding, and it'll crack and so on. So wood is already dried in a kiln before it is used in building. So you would think, well, isn't that kind of baking? Well, no, it's not quite.
What's the glue that holds wood fibers together, like the natural glue? I always want to call it like, what's the word for like werewolves? Lichens?
Oh, okay.
I know that's not what it is, but somebody knows what the word.
If there's
a
glue expert out there.
You crystallize the little adhesive compounds that tie the wood fibers together, and then they're able to move differently. But I know it's not werewolves, but it's also not the word for werewolves, but it's something similar to that.
But there is a lot of stuff going on in wood. I mean, we don't really think about it because it's just wood. But this wood is held together, like what Jamie was talking about, with all sorts of different chemical compositions. Saps and oils and moisture, and all these things are combined in wood. So the idea of kiln drying is first just to regulate the moisture content. And the moisture content, ideally for building a guitar, I saw it between 6 and 10%. Okay, so that means that they've cut 90% of the moisture out of it when they kiln dry it.
I just heard a yawn, and I'm not sure if it came from the room or from the internet.
Oh boy. Well, okay, so moving on, this is where it gets crazy. So I had to.
I'm messing with you, man.
So
I'm sorry for y'all that were on an educational journey there, and I just kind of.
Well, hey, I had to learn this stuff to share with y'all.
Yeah.
So, anyways, with a special torrification thing, they put it in a specialized oven that brings it to a high heat but deprives it of oxygen.
Well, you know, so the first thing that we've talked about on the show before, the first thing I ever heard about doing on this business was they used to put it in a chamber, and they'd run sound waves through the top to pre-vibrate and age the wood fibers, right? So that it worked as a top better. That was the assumption of what it took. But I think the torrification is, I don't know,
it's more sciencey.
Well, but the 24 or so that we've played, that I've played, you've played 1,000, whatever. But they do seem to respond in a more vintage way than the uncured top.
What they do is they put it in the special oven that brings the heat up to 400 degrees, which any of you Ray Bradbury fans know, at 351 degrees, that's the temperature in which paper catches on fire.
Oh.
So at 400 degrees, it should combust. But these special ovens deprive it of oxygen. So it's not going to combust. It just doesn't have the air. If you had air in there, it would do it. And it brings the moisture content of the wood down to 0, which is bad because effectively at that point, if you were to leave it like that, it would just crumble, okay? So then what they do is they have little jets inside this specialized oven that shoot steam slowly into this chamber, which brings the temperature down, but also introduces moisture at an extremely high temperature. And then they bring the moisture level up to between 3 and 6%. So it's still just ever so slightly less than what it started with the kiln drying, but the process of pulling all of the moisture out and then putting in the moisture that they want.
I didn't know they put steam back in it.
Yeah, steam is how they reduce the heat inside the oven.
Do you think you could put like the ashes of a loved one into the steam jet and then like impregnate the torrified top?
We know, we've
with
all
like
seen
the spirit of like really good guitar players.
We've all seen Batman the movie.
Yeah.
They have, to rehydrate, they had that little, they had the zapper ray that turned them into dust, but then their languages got mixed up at the end of the movie.
Oh,
if you haven't seen Batman the movie, awesome. 1966.
Is this a Lego?
Yeah.
The Lego?
Oh, there's comments coming in. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay. Oh, first of all, John Denver reference. I gotcha. Okay, so Ryan chimed in and goes, I'm assuming that a torrified guitar top means less maintenance and keeps your guitar playing in peak performance. And if that is true, why would every guitar not be torrified? This is a fantastic question. The simple answer is, it's not a simple answer. One, when you torrify wood, I had to look at this, okay? It does make the wood slightly weaker. Now, on all the articles I read about this, these were furniture builders and so on that were reading this. So they said, do not use torrified wood for making things like chair legs or large thing like a bookshelf or something like that. Because structurally speaking, the wood is not as strong as just, it was when it was freshly dried. But a guitar is hardly something that has to be like load bearing.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so I think that it kind of, additionally, with guitar, the torrification process on guitar, most builders only torrify the top and the braces currently. Now, I've read of some companies experimenting with the baking of the sides and back, but rosewood already has a very high oil content, and so it's tricky. You have to, it's going to work in a different way depending on the woods that you use, and I would assume that the more oily woods would probably be more challenging to do, but I'm sure it's coming. We brought some guitars today too to show you that already there are a lot of manufacturers that are using this process. The other, I guess, thing to answer the other half of your question is, why isn't everyone doing that? Well, if it takes me 10 minutes to explain the process and how it's all done, you know that there's additional time and resources invested in doing that, which means it's going to cost you more money to do that. Well, most people don't like paying more for stuff, especially if it's stuff that they don't find or feel brings them value, right? So right now, the torrified guitars are appealing to tone junkies or people who are trying to replicate a vintage guitar but have all the advantages of just going to the store and buying a brand new guitar.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't. This never struck me as like a guitar building technique that was just going to take over the entire market. And there's still people buying very, very like grainless Engelmann, like these pure white tops to build out of, and it's a look, it's a sound. That softer wood is a sound.
Yeah,
just
sure
like
is.
Cedars or redwoods or whatever, Koas, mahoganies or whatever else you put it on the top. But I think it's just an option. It's an option that does a thing. There are some building and stability benefits to it, but that doesn't make it desirable for every type of guitar and every type of construction.
Now, I'll also state that, well, first of all, Ron commented, don't stand on the guitar. You're right, Ron.
Okay.
Don't stand on any guitar. But additionally, reading the people who actually work with the baked
You can stand on
woods.
that one, the herringbone will hold you
Oh,
up.
yeah. As they said that you have to have a special blades to cut the wood with because it is a lot harder, okay? But they said that it is far more, accurate when you make your cuts. There's no chips. It's just clean as a whistle to work with. And so you're seeing more and more baked maple necks on electric guitars. So I know that Ibanez, on their new AZ models, they use the baked maple because it's more stable because it's not moving around. as far as the the saps and stuff like that. They've baked all that out of there, and so you have a very rock solid neck. But on the acoustic guitars, think of that. It's all just the top is where your sound is really coming from. Okay, so if you have a top that's more rigid, and you can control exactly what you want that vibration process. That
you reduce the variability.
Mm-hmm. Now again, also think about the bracing. The bracing is the other part of this particular guitar that's torrified. So, but it braces you want to be very rigid and stiff so that you can kind of really control the tone. So I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. And I'll tell you, it's like I own old guitars, and obviously we have a lot of these new ones. And I will say, you can hear an audible difference in these torrified guitars. They're also lighter weight. They just, every single one of them, people will pick them up and go, wow, this thing doesn't weigh anything. And that's the same response that people will often have when they pick up an old guitar. Well, Andy's chimed in. He said, I've only had experience with a sewer.
It's not sewer.
It's sewer.
It's not sewer.
That had a roasted maple neck. It felt and played amazing. Yeah. And I would probably guess that words that you might use, Andy, when you're talking about it probably felt very rigid. Okay, I mean, it didn't move around. It didn't feel jelly like when you're, pulling the guitar and it's not bending or doing things like that. It was very stable, and so that's more than likely why they're using that. There's another little slight thing. It's just cosmetic.
What's that?
Is that when you do this on any woods, it gives the appearance of the wood a darker quality, and I found out it's not just skin deep. So like when you take a torch to a piece of wood, you can take and sand that off, and it's just a natural wood color. But when you torrify the wood, it's that same color all the way through. So it's not just on the, it actually does something on the molecular level that changes the color of the wood.
Scratch some into that one and see.
Oh, they've done it.
Yellow through.
Yeah, you can see it, right? This is the aged version. So, but no, I went to a lot of these different sites to see this, and it's fascinating. I have to say, it is fascinating. So the guitar that I brought with us, I wanted to show people that this isn't just for costly guitars now. Now, the first company that did it was Bourgeois, and most of their stuff is north of $4,000, okay? Most of their guitars are costly, okay? Not out of reach, but still. Then the next company to come out with them I saw was Martin. So this right here is part of Martin's, what they call the Authentic collection. So this is the Authentic aged D28. It's modeled after an original 1930s D28 that is in their collection at the museum, and it is perfect. I mean, I own a pre-war Martin Dreadnought, and I can honestly tell you without any hesitation that the differences are so negligible. I mean, you're getting down to like, oh, it doesn't smell old. I mean, there's things like that. That's about it. But these guitars are so close. So the first time I saw one or heard of the concept of this, I was a little like, but then you listen to it. It has that roundness of a old guitar.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy good. Now, some people will go, well, that could just be because, they're, kind of a lower run. Maybe they just take more time on it and stuff. Maybe, but I'll tell you what, all Martin guitars are made with the utmost care and time and so on. So I don't necessarily subscribe to, oh, well, that's one made on a Monday or a Friday kind of business. All Martins are great. And so when you play one that's really head and shoulders tone-wise, sounding like an old one, and again, until you play an old guitar, you just don't quite understand. But you understand once you own one that how close, on the mark, this guitar is. So, but again, this is how much is this? Like $8,000? I mean, this is a pretty costly guitar, okay? So I know it's not for everyone. It sure beats paying $200,000 for an original.
So crazy. So it's
Hey man, there's people paying millions for NFTs. I would much rather pay 200 grand for a real Martin HD 28 than like $4 million for a picture of Pikachu on a JPEG or whatever, okay? So we're not talking about the high cost of guitars these days, all right? But you know, that being said, it's like, this is a very costly guitar. So some people go, oh, okay, you know, it must be nice, all right? But this guitar that Jamie's playing is made by Breedlove. It's part of their organic collection. Now the organic collection is all solid materials. So the back, the top, the side, everything is solid wood. There's no laminates. It's a gorgeous guitar. Breedlove is a very well-known boutique builder out of Oregon that kind of went more mainstream after they got some.
Kim Breedlove?
Kim Breedlove was the founder. He left Taylor to found Breedlove, and about 30 years ago. But then he got bought out by kind of corporate interests, and then they expanded to making some imported models, and they're made in Korea. So, but these models here use that torrification process, and they are audibly warmer sounding than the non-torrified counterparts. But this guitar sells for less than $700. So, you know, it is something that they are getting more competitive with, and I'll tell you, you know, it's pretty crazy how nice it is. Now, it's not the only company that's doing it. So you have, I brought two more as well here that I thought we'd just kind of chit-chat about. This one,
Careful.
don't tell me what to do.
I'll be as careless as I want to be.
This one just came in yesterday, Friday. Oh, here, I'll hold it while you.
Yeah. This is worth the price of admission to see if we can do this without trending on the internet somewhere.
So this guitar that Jamie's picked up is part of Gibson's newest offering. They are the custom shop vintage reissue or historic collection acoustics. Now, we've not been talking a lot about Gibson this year, and it's primarily because Gibson is, we'll just say, being difficult when it comes to getting products. So that being said, we can't get, people are having a real hard time getting Gibson guitars, so we don't want to get too crazy advertising them, because why get people excited about something that we can't get them right away, right? But we do, Mainstage does have a nice selection of Gibson acoustics in stock, and but they just trickle in at a snail's pace. They're very, very difficult to get in. So this one we've had on order for a year, and it just came in on Friday. It is the 1936 Advanced Jumbo. They only made this guitar in the 30s just for a few years. So it kind of flew under the radar, but now it's one of the most valuable Gibson acoustics as far as the originals that you can buy. This one is actually accurate down to pretty much every detail, because the back and sides are East Indian rosewood, but that's how the originals were done back in the 30s. You know, Martins were using Brazilian rosewood, but actually Gibson used East Indian. Just a little factoid for you. And the top has that beautiful Adirondack spruce.
It's just enough finish where you can still see just a
you can
faint trace of texture, but it's still...
See, Jamie has kind of a fun little thing here. Jamie has joined the Vintage Guitar Club recently, and so now he's starting to be able to.
I'm not a card-carrying member yet, but I'm well on my way.
And so he's looking at details, but I mean, you can tell, like with an old guitar, they have harder finishes, and you can see little bits of grain coming through, and it's. But yeah, every detail on that, even from the tapered headstock.
Yeah, man, that's a good little chunk piece of wood right there, traveling straight on through the neck. That's a girthy fella.
Well, go ahead and play a little bit then. don't know how it sounds to y'all, but I mean, it's filling the room up, and he's not even using a pick.
Yeah, where's your...
Here you go.
You want me to beat on a little bit?
Yeah. Do what you will.
Who's on there that wants to buy the guitar?
Well, okay. Actually, Ron had made a comment. He goes,
ask Ron where he wants the pick scratch on the top.
He goes, you can't buy talent. And you know, one thing I'm going to say to you, Ron, agree with you. We've had this conversation.
You can't buy it, but you can hire it.
Is that Eric Clapton would still sound like Eric Clapton on a Squier or on, you know, whatever custom shop guitar he plays live. True. I'm not going to deny that. But with these guitars, anything, the process we're talking about as far as the baked woods or, you know, high-end or less expensive models, it's not about that. It's about your experience, okay? They're all great guitars. I mean, that's what we're trying to showcase here, that you can spend less than $500 or you can spend, you know, $8,000. And what experience do you want to pull out of it? And we have the whole range, and so no one's being left out in this particular discussion.
And I don't know, the thing that I like about these guitars is it's like we've got a pick now so you can, it's real loud, right? That's not really the point. It's like,
it's the nuance.
Yeah. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, the dynamic range.
It's great.
Is,
I like
awesome.
I like the way that one sounds. I like the way this one sounds. That sounds like a record, right? It sounds like tons of records. But I still, my preference would be right here.
So I mean, now this guitar, this one here, is made by Ibanez. Okay. Now I know a lot of people, they think Ibanez, they think shredder guitars, and Ibanez does make some of the best shredder guitars in the planet. But they also make acoustics and have made them for a long, long time, since the 70s. And before, probably. I mean, I know that I've owned guitars by Ibanez acoustics from the 70s that are great. But they're often overlooked because their electric guitars are so iconic. But that being said, Ibanez was the first builder that was, let's just say, in, you know, your sub $1,000, that was coming out with a Torrified option. Now, they may not be the first. It's the first I saw. Okay, so feel free to correct me if you know better. But that being said, this model they call their Artwood Vintage. And so what they've done here is, first of all, yes, it's all Torrified wood, but then they even give it that kind of faux distressing look to it. So it looks like it's an old beat up guitar, but this guitar doesn't have scratches on it. I mean, it's a new guitar. But I'll tell you, they make the regular Artwood models, so this is a kind of a unique experience in that you can try one that doesn't have the Torrified wood, and you can try one with the Torrified wood. And I can tell you what, we have not had a single person who's done the A-B thing who's not heard a marked difference between them. And so here's the Ibanez. Now, Ibanez has got a very thin neck. It's very easy to get a hold of. So it definitely, I mean, it's not going to bark as loud as some of the ones that we've played tonight, but this guitar also is only priced at $550. I mean, that is ridiculous. You can't even buy a Yeti cooler for that. Just kidding.
You can steal one out of the back of Brad's truck.
Oh, Lord have mercy. We got some more comments. First of all, Andy, thanks for commenting. He says, sounds great. I don't disagree one bit. Ron agrees with my comment. I played $300 guitars for years. I've moved up a bit now, and the experience is totally worth the cost.
There you go.
I mean, that's kind of what we're pointing at. It's not just about showing out. That's not what this is about. It's what tool inspires you to do what you do. And then Andy, feel, sound, and playability is subjective. I completely agree. Like with these guitars that we've played, this one has a soft V shape. Okay, when we say V-shaped, the neck profile is usually round. Okay, and we're talking about the area on the back here. But back in the turn of last century, Yeah, the turn of last century, guitar necks were very common to have a sharp V profile. Sharp. I mean, like it was very, you could see it. I mean, clear as a day. And then progressively they kept the V shape, but just softened it. So really most guitars in the 1930s, or many I should say, had some form of V neck profile. So this Ibanez does have a soft V profile, but it's very thin. It's a very thin and Ibanez guitars have for years been known for fast necks, very low action, they play great. And this one's no different, but it's neat how they put their little vintage spin, you know, the soft V on a neck that's designed, you know, to be moving around on. But this has the bone nut, bone saddle. I think all these guitars feature those things. But yeah, I mean, for little to nothing. Now, Ibanez does not offer all of their guitars using this Torrified process. Only the Artwood Vintage, and then they have a lesser expensive model that, unfortunately, because of these shortages, are just not available, that they use the term thermo-aged. But they're plywood, which I think that's interesting too. So
they're UV baking the glue instead of worrying about the wood itself?
I would love to talk to someone about that. I don't know who you talk to in Japan or whatever, but about this stuff. But yeah, they actually have guitars that they advertise as thermo-aged, and I don't know exactly what that means. Is it the whole guitar? Is it just bracing? Is it just the top?
Man, there's some sharp edges on the edge of this bridge.
Like they don't bevel or contour these at all.
Yeah,
in the 30s. Is that right?
Well, I've never,
Evidently it is.
Mine isn't that sharp, so mine has a little bit of a soft edge. But I mean, you're going to have variances too. Plus, one challenge here is that
they had to have done it on purpose, though, right?
I don't know. I will never say they had to do something. One thing I'll learn, if you guys are fans of Gibson and have been through as many as I have, the only thing consistent about Gibson are their inconsistencies.
There you go.
They truly are one of those companies where from year to year, you'll go, oh, well, that one was made in 2014. The first 6 months of the year, they were doing this and this with the finish. But then after that, they did this and this. And you're going,
we had this guy, Paul, on the line.
It's weird.
He had to use his pocket knife that his grandpa gave him instead of the damn milling machine.
What's funny about you saying that is that, for some of you guitar geeks, now again, I'm going to lose a lot of y'all for this, but there are names that you'll hear like, oh, Tom Murphy. Or like they have a whole thing at the Murphy Lab. He was an employee. He just worked in the spray room, okay? But he just got to be so popular for these aged finishes. Well, here's what's funny. They weren't even aged finishes when he was working for Gibson. He was doing this stuff at home. And he got to be popular within the guitar show circuit. And then, they turned it into something.
Money-making sucker now.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, it's one of those things where with Gibson, it's not like, there's a lot more shooting from the hip and a lot more.
Yeah, that cat, I don't know, man. He's definitely popular.
Oh, no doubt. So, I mean, that being said, I thought it was a really neat subject, and I thought, you're hearing more and more of this stuff because we've got some of the Music Man Sterling guitars came in, and that new Mariposa model.
Yeah.
Has, as well as the Cutlass, has the baked or roasted maple necks. Mm-hmm. And I had a person ask me, roasted maple, like what? And I thought, you know what? A lot of people, it is a fairly new thing. And so I just thought it would make a pretty interesting topic. So I've honestly been reading about this for a while. And there's a lot that goes into this. And I just thought it was a pretty neat,
there's a pretty good Guthrie Govan interview where he first started playing with that when he was a Sur player before he went to Charvel, and all of his, he tours a lot in like East Asia, it's like high humidity fluctuation environments, and that's what he said that like it became a necessary thing for the amount of neck maintenance and truss rod adjusting he was doing, that when they transitioned to a baked maple neck, that went out the window, that it was like rock solid, locked in. Now I don't know over time if it turns loose the frets easier, the failures are catastrophic when they do happen, but he definitely stuck with those neck types.
Well, and one thing that from again other outlets that I've read about the torrification process is that it makes the wood more stable, okay? So when this first came out, it was something that was about, well, will these guitars, now that you've pulled so much moisture out of it.
I feel like I should pantomime because we're looking at the side of my fat head, but you're
Oh,
talking.
well, Gibson doesn't like changing camera angles, I guess. There we go.
I'm going to, no, just, I was going to keep it there and I was going to pretend I was saying what
you were
saying.
me. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but the thing is that people, when this was early on, were going, well, I don't want to buy one of these because if I spend thousands of dollars for a guitar, then what? It prematurely cracks. And what? But from all the woodworking, and we're not talking just guitar, I've been reading from cabinet makers and all sorts of people who make this. They said that when you pull that out, it actually makes the wood more stable and less prone to cracking, and also less prone to humidity issues.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, a problem with woodworking is let's say you take solid materials to make a tabletop. Well, with humidity, even with a kiln-dried piece, tabletops that are solid will tend to cup and will then crack, especially if you have it mounted to a heavy table base. Well, the same thing will happen with guitars. I mean, we've all heard of guitar tops cracking and so on.
Same thing happens with everything.
And so, but one thing I have to say, now maybe it's just because of the, we'll just say relative scarcity of the Torrified. I have not seen in the forums or anything about people who have bought Martins with the VTS system or any of these that have increased experiences of cracking or any cracking.
Yeah, well, them cats ain't taking them guitars anywhere, though.
Well, but most of the people that
$10,000 guitar.
well,
owners
but
in
as
the
I
case
said,
at the
we're
house.
showing here we got $500 versions, we got
Yeah.
$800. So it's not just about that, and you'd be surprised. It's kind of like a lot of times the reason why guitars get ruined is because they're not being taken out. You keep them in a house, you keep them in a case, you think you're doing right, and the thing is just rotting in the case.
You soak it in desiccant packs.
Yeah. Well, but it's kind of like the shipbuilders. They chose to do that to the wood because it made it more resistant to rot and to made it more waterproof, effectively.
There you go.
And so this might turn out to be a better thing health-wise. Your guitar, you have less to worry about as far as humidity. On top of that, and you get to enjoy the tone benefits to boot. So, but anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching. I mean, these are amazing guitars. I would highly recommend you come down to the shop and visit and try one out for yourself. Because really putting your hands on one of these, understanding what we're talking about, how lightweight they are, and just the open sound is just something you really have to experience. So,
Are you going to have a Black Friday Torrified guitar sale?
you know, we definitely will have a Black Friday sale, but I'll tell you, the way things are going, I think there will be like, you know, me and a couple other guys at the shop, like holding a couple of packs of strings and just like,
Well, you got plenty of picks, though, right?
we got plenty of picks, you know. No, actually, our inventory, we've been working very hard. Our inventory is looking good, but I'll tell you, it gets to be more and more of a challenge. So if you guys are in that kind of gift buying mode, you definitely want to come down earlier rather than later because things get challenging. So, but again, thank you so much for popping in, and I definitely encourage you. Next week, we're going to have to do the show at a earlier special time. Okay, we're going to be on next Monday evening, just because we had a prior engagement. So I'll remind you next week. But again, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.